actually officially live now. So the talk that we are going to engineer about engineering and scaling engineering is about to start. So if this were an algorithm, we're about to put the first input into the X component. And what's cool about this algorithm here today on the ScaleUp Heroes podcast is that we have people from around the world. Here, I'm in California. My name's Ryan. We've got representation from Porto, Madrid, London, Tallinn, and London. And we are going to be talking about how to scale up engineering. Who are these people that we are talking with today? They are the heroes. They don't have their capes on, but they are the ones that are in the streets. They are in the companies. They are the ones that are recruiting and engineering the way to find the best engineers. So if you want to follow other amazing podcasts like this and find out the secrets to being a hero when it comes to scaling up, not startup, because startup is cool, but then you get funding and then you've got to scale. So if you want more podcasts like this, or you want to get in touch with other people who are in this same zone, go to scaleupacademy.io. Now, my name's Ryan Foland. I'm going to be hosting today, but that means that I get the pleasure of sitting back and listening to everyone as our moderator, Pedro, takes the reins. So Pedro, the floor is now yours. I'm excited to go through these questions, and I'll be taking notes and looking forward to how we engineer this conversation on engineering.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Okay, so hi everyone, and let's start with a very interesting panel for sure. So we have here Alberto from Trey, Luca from Signal, Samuel from OnTruck, and Sergei from Pipedrive. And I think that I would like to start for a kind of a brief introduction about yourselves. So what do you do in your current company? What does your company do, right? So that people can actually kind of understand what's in it. So Pipedrive, Trey, Signal, and OnTruck, and also very important, if you don't mind, is actually to explain to the audience how big is your engineering team. So I can probably start, let's say, by alphabetical order. So Alberto from Trey.io, kick off.
Hi, Pedro. So nice to meet you. So I'm currently the director of engineering at Trey, and my job is scaling the engineering team at Trey. So I manage a team of about 25 engineers, and I take care of the onboarding, of the hiring process, basically I engineer the process for getting engineers, as well as taking care of the delivery of projects. So I'm making sure that the projects are delivered on time and they respect the vision for the company, as well as company culture and employees retention.
Wow, a lot of things for sure for just one person.
I know.
Very well. And what about Trey? And what about Trey.io? So what do you do?
So that is my current role at Trey.
No, but what's the company about, Trey?
Sure. So the Trey is we are an automation company automation startup. So what we create like a general platform for automating processes within a company. So think about any kind of cloud product, like messaging, database in the cloud, file system, any kind of service with an API can potentially be automated and connected to other services without any engineering resources and any technical expertise from the person who's using Trey.
Okay, very well. Thank you so much, Alberto. Luca, you're next.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Luca. I am the VP of Engineering at Signal Media in London. At Signal, we use machine learning and NLP to ingest and classify millions of documents every day, and to allow businesses to search things that are hyper relevant to them in near real time. So we have an ingestion pipeline, we ingest a document, we classify them, and our clients can use our interface and other couple of channels to consume the data to see only what they care about, and not all the white noise that naturally you have when you talk about worldwide content. My role in the company, one is I'm responsible for the technology and engineering team. On the other side, I'm also involved in the company strategy definition, and I'm involved in the product roadmap definition. We are currently about 12 engineers and 3 data scientists, always growing as every startup.
Yeah, very well, very well. Samuel, OnTruck, you're next.
Hi, Pedro. So OnTruck first is a company that is building a marketplace for B2B logistics, so namely industrial freight transportation. So what we do is we connect what we call shippers, customers that want to send stuff, usually pallets, with truck drivers. And at OnTruck, I'm the CTO, and I'm responsible for engineering, and also I'm responsible for business intelligence. Since one thing that we have realized is that business intelligence now is very much data science driven and very connected with technology. So it makes a lot of sense to actually have them working together.
Oh.
My team right now is about 30 people, I would say.
30 people, gotcha. Very well. Sergei, last but not least.
Right. So I'm CTO at Pipedrive. Joined around 5 years ago when the company was still about 20 people altogether. And Pipedrive is actually a sales CRM tool, which initially was built specifically for salespeople because founders who are actually consulting and doing sales themselves were not able to find a tool which suit their needs as a salespeople, and they decided to fill the gap on the market. So yeah, I'm responsible as a CTO not only for R&D function as like software development, but also infrastructure team. We host in private cloud, and also business intelligence platform is my responsibility, as well as security, including cybersecurity, compliance, data protection, which is a hot topic now. And altogether, I think I have a biggest team. We have more than 190 people in my organization.
Very well, very well. You actually talked about a little bit about GDPR, and I can relate a lot to that. I think all of us did. And yes, and finally, my name is Pedro. I'm engineering director at Talkdesk. Talkdesk is a cloud contact center based solution. And right now we are around 170 engineers total, distributed between Porto and Lisbon here in Portugal. Very well. So enough about introduction. So I think I can kick off with a hot question. And the first question would be, so how do you differentiate yourself? Do you differentiate yourself from other trillion companies that are looking for engineering talent? So right now, at least my perspective is the market is really, really hot. So we have a lot more of jobs than actually we have engineers, at least qualified ones to work for our companies. And what I've seen is that actually the war for talent is alive more than ever. So I think that probably we can start with you, Sergei, because you were the last one. So
Sure,
how
sure.
do you Pipedrive kind of deal with all of this madness of recruiting?
So actually, I don't know if you guys are aware, Estonian startup scene is really hot. Like just this year, we got over 300 million investments into Estonian startups. And Estonia itself is a very tiny country, actually, like 1,300,000 people altogether. So per capita, we are probably past, we are top, like number one, maybe two after California. It's been challenging. My approach was as I was an engineer myself before. I know how important it is for each individual engineer to have as much impact on the user directly as possible. So we kept all our processes such that engineer is actually able to have his direct impact. Basically, engineer is responsible for everything, starting from coding and basically deploying to live production. Obviously, we have a lot of safety net, and I can assure you that what's easy with 5 people, with 5 engineers or even 20 engineers becomes really hard with over 100 engineers who all try to change many things at once. And this is one of the areas where we invested heavily in the tooling. So now we are able to deploy like 50 changes a day into production, and all these changes are driven by engineers, not any other function. So I think this is what attracts many of talent.
Very well. So you're kind of leaving the DevOps culture, aren't you?
Yep.
Very well, very well. So Samuel, OnTruck.
So for us, we do a couple of things to try to differentiate. I think Madrid is hot, but maybe not, definitely not as hot as Tallinn or California or any of the other like large hubs. So we are able to actually take advantage of that. One thing that we are focusing on is culture, is building a culture that people want to relate with and that people want to work at, and being very vocal about how our culture is. So we write articles, we run events, and we also lend our space to other events people might want to have. So that's something that we have seen that it creates actually like a bond, and also it saves time on both sides. Sometimes on the recruiting efforts, because if people come or read or talk to us and they feel they don't relate with us, that also saves them time in applying, and it saves time, because one thing that is important is not just like attracting talent. I mean, there are many clever skilled people. It's also attracting the talent that will do great in your team and that will enjoy and will have fun, will have good progress in the company.
Absolutely.
And then, then also another thing that we care about is that the work has impact, as Sergei just said. So we work very closely with product, and we work very closely in actually all together figuring out the solutions to the problems and trying to bring as much context as possible from business directly into engineering. So it's not about coming to the office, taking a ticket and implementing, but actually coming to the office, learning about new problems, understanding why that is a problem, and coming up with solutions.
Very well, very well. I can relate a lot to that for sure. Luca.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, what the other two guys said, 100%. I think that we're using similar things. On the specific of what we're trying to signal is also what we didn't realize is that the important thing is we had to define our identity and be very clear about our identity with our candidates. So for us, for example, one of the traits is that we're not just engineers, we're not just coders, we're problem solvers. And by saying that, we want to say to people, you come here, your job is solving problems. And the way you solve problems, it could be everything. Code is just one way. And you decide every time what's the right way, and every time you'll pick the right tool. And the way we're going to try to make that happen is like we're going to be very clear through the conversation we have with our candidates and try to highlight what that means for us. How do we leave that, that cultural trait? What do we do and what we don't do? So, if you're a problem solver, it means that you might have to go and meet a lot of clients, because that's the best way to understand. And sometimes for engineers, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, go out with the sales guys, you're going to meet you, come back when you idea, you try. But we really try to do that and be very clear about the goods and sometimes the bad, what the trade-offs, so people can relate to that and understand if they can be happy here and they can contribute. And if they say, we know that we're going to be happy and we're going to be very effective in the team.
Well, actually, you were talking about it, and I think that we are now seeing a trend where instead of just kind of having a very strong engineering side and a very strong product side, we actually have kind of a fusion. And I usually say that we shouldn't be just an engineering team, but we actually should be a product engineering team, right? Exactly because of understanding the purpose, the why. We are solving problems. We are not just kind of implementing features for the sake of it. So absolutely, very well. And finally, Alberto.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that has been said so far. So definitely focus on your values, focus on the impact that people are going to have on your product. Show them that they will make a big change as soon as they join the company. Make them like a roadmap. Make sure they understand what it is expected from them in 1 month time, in 2 months time, in 6 months time, and that's how you differentiate. Like another way would be, as you define your value, you also should define the value as for the engineering team in terms of like what is the engineering manifesto for your company? What is the value the teams believes in? Do you believe in code reviews, in making the best code that you can? Do you believe in being challenged every day And also, again, it's all about showing them what they will be doing at the company, as well as telling them, as well as the usual things like events and running sponsorship, making sure you show the culture on social network. Like, for example, Instagram is a very, very strong way of showing what people will do once they join the company. Show that you're not just like a bunch of people coding all day, but showing that they will be having fun as well as having like the best, as well as doing the best work of their life.
Very well. Well, thinking about Talkdesk, I believe that we actually can provide two main things to our engineers. So the first one is definitely autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Okay, so kind of making sure that, yeah, and I think all of you have mentioned that, right? So kind of being impact driven, kind of making a difference, and people that can actually kind of they are allowed to improve their craft and understand the purpose and have autonomy. I think that's something very important for all engineers out there. And the other one that we usually, so it's pretty much like my sales pitch, is about kind of making people a world-class engineer. So usually when I have on my interviews, I promise that they won't play a lot of foosball or ping or table tennis, but for sure they'll become a world-class engineer. And that's something also that tends to attract a lot of people, because, you know, kind of you go to every single company out there, you know, Google's, Facebook's, whatever, and you have like tons of things that can distract you, but there are not so many companies that can actually invest in you and push that much and demand from you that actually you're going to go to the next step of your career. So yeah, definitely, I think that all of us are kind of very, very much on the same mindset. But also, you know, so we've been talking a lot about recruitment, but also one thing that is definitely very important is about the retention piece, right? So we want to hire more people, we want to scale, we want to double our teams in a year or so, but we also have this kind of the retention issue, right? Because so the market is hot, it's not easy to attract people, it's even harder to retain people. So how do you see that kind of these both worlds can live together? Alberto.
Yeah, sure. As we said, retention and recruiting, they go hand in hand, because you don't want to recruit a bunch of people and have them leave in a few months after that. So first thing is obviously, as long as we said, keeping them challenged, is create like a positive environment and making sure they feel empowered. The environment is diverse and open to different point of view, as well as different like a school of thoughts and people from different backgrounds, so people they feel accepted. And in practice, the specific way we try to manage that is through the one-on-ones and to implementing a system of OKRs, which we are currently like deploying across the company. So OKR is it's a quite popular like management technique where the entire company, as well as team and individuals, are measured according to a series of objectives and results. So you define objectives which are technically quite ambitious but still achievable, and then you define metrics for those, so you can define success and those should be quantifiable. As well as that will give like a vision for the team and objective for everybody to abide to. We also allow for some extra time for when people want to experiment with new things, and we also try to embed that into the main career objective for that person. So in this way, you have like a short-term and long-term objectives. And on top of that, we make sure we understand what are their like personal needs as well as career goals, because we need to understand that those two then need to go hand in hand as well. So the HR team together with engineering team, they work together to make sure the package that we offer to people is great in the long term. And I'm talking about things like parental leaves and like a more work from home policy, and as well as having the ability to work on side projects. Those things all together form a great engineering culture and hopefully provide for like a much longer stay for the person at the company.
Absolutely. Luca, do you have any insights?
Yeah, so I think that retention is super, super important, because otherwise you're not growing your team. You go continuously net zero, right? You lose a number of people, you keep hiring the same, you're the same. So you're not able to grow as you hope. And I think that so the second value is also that from an interview, a candidate perspective, I believe that coming in an organization, sitting with an engineer and hearing that this person has been with a company 2-3 years, especially for a high growth business where things are changing a lot, it means a lot, right? The new candidate can understand that, okay, this is an interesting place. Things change quite often in a startup, but the people are talking to me have been here 2, 3, 4 years. That's great, especially when you work in a hectic market. You talk about the market in Portugal. In London is crazy. Like the number of opportunities that we all have in engineering space are, way higher than the people there. So people can pay whatever they like. So the ability to correlate the fact that people really like to be here and for good reason is a super effective way to improve also your recruiting. So your conversion might go higher if you're able to demonstrate that long-term commitment. And on the other side, I think that how you're going to achieve that? Well, I think that you go to the very early stage about, are you hiring the right person? Are you hiring people that are first aligned to your ethos, to your identity, to your culture? Because probably half of the time the problem is there's no match between the organization and their identity and behaviors and beliefs and the individual. There's nothing wrong, but that is causing some attrition. And the other one is related to what you discussed about yourself about the master autonomy purpose. I 100% agree with Daniel Pink is that if you're able to give people open problems and if they can keep working on the open problem, that means that we're all going to find the next wave of challenges or error that they have to get expertise, and that will keep them engaged every time. So if you can put all these things together with the right mix, you have the retention, and retention will probably hopefully drive higher also your conversion and hiring. So you have a nice machine that it keeps supporting itself.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Samuel, any thoughts on this?
So I relate very much with what Luca said, which actually a good match is the key for retention. Like if you hire somebody that is a good match for you, and also that the company is a good match for them, then pretty much retention, unless you do a big mistake, retention should actually happen. Why? Because people tend to want to develop themselves normally on the same place if there are interesting challenges, because once you are having fun, once the atmosphere is positive and you grow as a person, then why would you like to risk? No, humans normally don't like these risks. So normally when somebody risks and changes, it's because something is not working. It's either there was not a good match or something is not working well. And then you need to look at your organization to try to figure out what was the reason that made that person actually leave. Another thing that I think is really important to try to find those things early is to keep the agile mentality. Like be very thorough in the inspect and adapt thing. Like you need to listen to people. You need to understand what is it that is not working, and you need to make changes. And especially if you do that often, and people feel that you are listening to them, and that some of the changes they propose are being taken into account and executed, then again, it's another good way of making sure that you have the atmosphere that your people will want to stay in.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very true. Sergei, so I'm very looking forward to your answer, pretty much because you have like pretty much a big team, right? And I actually I read very recently 2 articles that actually I think that influenced a lot this situation. That is, so when a startup or a company reaches like the 100 engineers, flex structures doesn't seem to work out very well. And very recently, I've read also an article that so the title was "Startups Be Warned: Something Weird Happens to Companies When They Hit 150 People." So that's definitely the case of Pipedrive. So what's your take on this recruitment and retention?
Yeah. I mean, of course, retention starts with recruitment, right? Because you first have to hire people who have the same values as everyone else in the company. And for Pipedrive, we actually have been nominated as the best employer in Estonia like 2 years in a row. And what people are bringing out is like they like to work in Pipedrive because of other people. It's not because of like the challenges of a salary or whatever. It's actually the other people who are making workplaces an enjoyable one. What else we have is I believe that the transparency in the organization is very important. Like people actually know how company is doing, because once they start wondering, once they don't have answers to all of their questions, they start looking around for other opportunities, right? Then there is a growth opportunity, personal growth opportunity, and within startup, like I'm telling every new person, like, hey, don't worry, as company is growing, you will be growing much faster as if you would be working in a kind of stable environment which doesn't grow too fast, right? So like people who joined as developers like 2-3 years ago, they went to a team lead and an engineering manager position like in 2 years. It's not possible in any other kind of environment, right? And also mobility of engineers became important once we actually passed certain number of engineers, where when you're working with the same people on the same problem for several years, you kind of become bored, right? And if processes in organization doesn't allow this kind of mobility, where engineer himself is able to decide that, hey, I'm actually I don't have to ask a manager. The process supports engineers' mobility. Then they can look for new opportunities themselves. Nobody needs to push them. We actually don't like to push people or motivate them. Like they need to have internal motivation, right, to do their work and to find new challenges. And the organization just need to support this. So we recently had this. A bit of hierarchical structure where we had these small independent teams, team lead managing this team, and then there is an engineering manager who is like managing 3 to 4 teams. And it already created too many layers, and some problems were not bubbling up and so on. And we just recently did a reshuffle or restructure. We restructured the organization. We said, okay, now we don't have a small teams. We have Tribe, which is about 20, 30 engineers. And it's already gives you opportunity to work on other problems which adjacent teams were working on. But on top of that, also the whole product development process has been revamped. And now instead of just doing projects or some product ideas, we call them missions, and these missions have to be pitched to engineers by product managers, explaining why it's important, and engineers actually free to choose which missions they are going to join. And this creates this motivation of people actually themselves deciding what they want to work on, and again, gives opportunity to grow in different directions. And I think this is what's important for retention.
Very good answer. I'm really happy I asked this question. Very well. So I have one question that kind of has been lingering here in my mind is, so in your opinion, what's the hardest part of the recruitment in your experience? So I think we can start from you, Sergei.
I believe it's the number of people you have to hire. I mean, again, in Pipedrive, we were doubling the engineering organization every year. And you can imagine going from 10 to 20 people is maybe not a very hard job, but and going from 20 to 40 once you already did this previous task is easy. But when your organization is 100 and you want to go to 200 in 1 year, this becomes challenging because, and you need to revamp or review all your processes. How do you actually interview? What's your interviewing process? Who is interviewing? How these people actually getting into the teams with whom they are going to work. So initially I was doing the first interview, like the first screening interview, and also selling the idea of working for Pipedrive. But obviously, if you need to hire 100 engineers, it doesn't scale. I wouldn't have time to do any of other tasks, right? So we changed that. So now the team lead or engineering manager is doing this first interview, and again, the idea of this first interview is really half to understand the fit, and the other half is to sell Pipedrive to the candidate, right? And then, like, actually, our process is quite long, and this is on one hand is very beneficial to see if there is actually a fit and if there is a commitment from the candidate. But in some cases, it's a challenge because market is hot, and if candidate has like 2-3 offers on the table, you actually want to go faster, and you can't really, because that would jeopardize the whole idea of having this long recruitment process. So it's you always need to wait or balance this wish to hire the best versus hire fast, right?
I agree. It's a patience game, absolutely. So, what about you, Samuel? Do you have what's the hardest part for you on your recruitment?
I think I would say, like, especially if I compare with other paths that are not engineering, I would say that the most complex thing is to find the candidates. Like, usually the problem is not that you have, like, I don't know, 20 candidates for a position and you need to filter them, or that they are not qualified or things like that. The problem usually is like you open a position and you get 2 CVs. So it takes a while until you can actually get enough candidates in the pipeline. So normally it takes like need to have like dedicated sourcing or agencies or things like that. So that's definitely for me like the most complex thing. And then as you scale, the thing that changes the most and requires a lot of attention is keeping up an aligned process and style. No, like normally like more and more team members start making interviews of all the candidates. But you need to pay attention so that the interviews are actually more or less comparable or similar, that the interviews actually have good quality. So even if you don't hire the candidate gets a good experience in the whole process. So those 2 things I would say are really worth looking into. Like finding candidates actually gets normally easier in my experience as you scale. It's true that you need more, but you have more brand, you have word of mouth. You have like a better, larger organization that can do that type of work. But then more and more, you need to pay attention that your team is able to actually have like a sustainable way of interviewing and similar one.
Oh. How about you, Luca?
Yeah, I think that sourcing is super hard. Finding the right candidates, both as an organic, so having the candidates come in and talk to you, or you go out and source them by headhunting, is super hard, especially in such an active market like London, because there are a lot of people, but naturally finding people that can help you is not easy. And I do agree that the moment sometimes where in the process, your process might be even not dramatically long, what could be inside, but they might be already at a certain stage with other companies, and there's always the temptation to say, oh, let's cut it short. But at the same time, then that will be, most of the time is a mistake, right? You need to accept that if people are already made their mind up, most of the time you let them go. If you cut the process short just to take a shortcut, that means you're going to do another time, and then your whole process is going out of the window. It doesn't count. And the other thing that is always tricky, together with sourcing is, as been already said, is how you double, how you grow at a high pace that you're going to do, 10 to 20, 20 to 40, and 40 to 8, and so on, because this can be a full-time job for the whole team, between screening, interviewing, going to event to be a bit of brand building, saying, the good things you're doing so people engage. It's hard because that's going to be the whole team job pretty much all day. Well, actually, you're still trying to build a great product. So find a balance, how much time you invest to have a good presence and keep meeting the right people, and how much you need to say, look, this is how many candidates really I can take every week. It's important. And as I do agree also with analysis about, even if candidates are not the right fit, to try to give the best experience possible, because as I said before, sometimes there's no match, but it's not right or wrong. It just is no match. But at the same time, if you have a good experience, and they can still word of mouth, they can say, well, it wasn't for me. There was the rough time in my career to join the company, but they're going to have people they know and they can still say, it maybe it's worthwhile for you to have a conversation or see if they're growing, have a chat. So definitely that is important as well.
Very good point. Very good point, Luca. Alberto, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us at Tray, yeah, some of the most challenging recruiting parts are definitely like, again, sourcing is extremely hard, especially like sourcing the senior engineers. Like there are very few, and London is a very, very competitive market, especially for us there, because we recruit like a very, very specific like type of engineers, like Scala engineers, which are already like a subset of the already like very small talent pool. So definitely like deciding which recruiting channels you want to invest time in. Do you invest a lot of time with recruiters versus like a bigger platform like hire.com or like AngelList, like deciding where you want to invest your time. So that would be like a big challenge, because again, you can have like a big recruiting team and invest a lot of resources, but then if you have not directed your resources well, you will still fail. So I would definitely echo whatever, yeah, everything that is being said so far. And then also I wanted to iterate the point that, again, we need to minimize the false positive. So we don't want to hire like a person that is not a good fit for the team, skill-wise or culture fit-wise. And also we want to minimize the false negatives. As in, we need to be able to detect the right candidate and to convince them and to make sure they we are able to select for the best talent, despite of like unconscious bias, and despite of the fact that sometimes the interviews cannot be extremely thorough because of time reason and because of resource reason. We tend to interview like hundreds of candidates for one position, so you definitely really want to nail down that single person that you will eventually hire. So again, it's all about defining process, define the values that you are hiring for, building your brand reputation, and engage on the correct channels. That would be the best advice for me on this regard.
No, very true. You know, actually, we need to understand that when we want to scale, because when we want to go faster, when we are recruiting and onboarding, we actually are going slower. So this is like a long-term investment for sure. I think that we are almost running out of time. So I have just like one quick question for all of you. And that question is, so if you would need to give one engineering advice for any startup that is listening to us and has the ambition to scale, what advice would that be? So we can start with you, Alberto. One advice?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say make sure that as you scale, you preserve your culture. Like culture is like the air that we breathed. It is there, but no one sees it until it's so bad that people leave because of it. So I would say just keep your A player and keep improving on your culture and define your value early on and define your culture manifesto, as I said before, regarding your value as engineering team.
Very well. Luca?
I would say that scale is not just about a number, but most of the time is also about being able to tackle larger or more complicated problems. So you always need to tune your engineering and product process so that it can be elastic enough to absorb the next growth stage. So you have to have a process that is not too light or too heavy for where you are. You have to be good for where you are, but ready for the next generation. You have to change it so you can absorb the next growth stage.
Very well. Samuel?
Actually, I don't want to copy. I don't want to copy Alberto or Luca, who actually said things that I had in my head as well. So those are very true, but I would add a new take on the thing, which would be to not forget to do retrospectives or whatever process you have that actually lets you stop the machine and figure out what's working or not working. Because as you grow, many things are changing. As you scale, many things are changing, and usually you don't realize. You don't realize what's going on. You don't realize what is different in your team. You want to go very fast. And this is like a very good way to actually pause, take a breath, and then see if the machine is like well oiled.
Very well. Samuel? Samuel, no, sorry, Sergei, one advice. You're on mute.
Sorry, guys. So yeah, actually two quick advices. Like one is, like as a CTO, my job is to not become a bottleneck for the business. Like if there is a business opportunity, make sure that engineering is not the bottleneck to growth. Like whatever it means, either it's architecture or it's hiring process or culture or whatever, just try to recognize where are your bottlenecks and try to resolve them before they actually become an issue. You don't want to fail a business because engineering is a bottleneck. And the other is always be changing. Again, take retrospective, see what doesn't work, and don't be afraid of change. And I see there was a question from Facebook.
Yes, so Daniel Evo actually asked a question to Sergei. So he says, Sergei, you mentioned that developers in a team of up to 20 are free to choose a project for themselves. How do you motivate them to take tedious or legacy projects?
Right. So there are two types of tedious or legacy projects. No, I mean really, like there are bugs obviously in the software which have to be solved, and there are some refactorings and so on. And for that we have a special workforce which is called Launchpad, whatever it means. Basically, all missions launched from the Launchpad and they land on the Launchpad. And Launchpad is a team of like 4 to 6 engineers who are working on fixing bugs, doing basically engineering cleaning of the system, right? They're also doing on-calls and so on. So these small legacy things can be solved by Launchpad. But if it's a big refactoring of a big system, legacy system, then obviously it's a mission. And this mission has to be sold to engineers. And I think engineers understand the importance and they will go for this mission.
Very well. Very good. So I think I'm good from my side. So Ryan, I'll pass the ball to you.
All right. Well, I have had quite a fun time. And in order to recap, I'm going to basically engineer a word off of engineering. So if you see my notes here, you know, classically I write engineer down the side. So E-N-G-I-N-E-R-I-N-G. And this is pulled from all the notes of everybody here. So E, and for everybody who's just really wondering what I'm doing, I'm recapping it all. I've engineered, I was going to come up with an algorithm, but that was too complicated. So this is a note from each of you across the board spelling engineering. Okay, so number one, and this is for how to scale engineering. Number one is engage with your potential candidates. Number two, it's not just about attracting talent. This idea of the experience, whether it's a good fit or not, is crucial for the word of mouth component. G is to give value. I love that everybody's talking about the value that you're giving, not taking. I is interpret your brand. I love this brand interpretation, right? How is your brand being perceived by these potential employees? N is it's not just about the numbers, right? It's not just about the numbers. It's about getting the right people in the seats. E is for being elastic to absorb the next generation of growth. It's not just about now, it's about elasticity, like that. And then another E, right? The double E is a triple E, but we got one. It's this idea of an engineering manifesto. Love that, right? Come up with your manifesto. Like that sounds so, you know, Roman or so like chivalrous or so like this is our manifesto, right? While we're all just hacking on the computer. And then R is for retrospective. You've got to look back. I is for the fact that the intention should be to create a world-class engineer. Like it's not just that you're an engineer, you're going to be world-class. N is for not becoming a bottleneck. And G is to grow and to continue to grow with your engineers and your employees. So there we go. That is your engineer spelt out vertically, built out horizontally, that I now know and everybody knows because of this. So a lot of fun. I'm excited to get to know a lot of you guys. And really, if the one thing that is the hero tool, it's that you're looking at your employees as actual people who want to professionally develop and grow. And I think engineers too often are put into this box where they're maybe introverts and they're just behind a computer and we're using them for their brilliant skills to solve problems. But the one through line that I really believe makes your heroic efforts of recruitment is that at the end of the day, they're real people who have real professional goals, and you're trying to make them world class. So that alone, I think, will solve problems of people in the startup to scale up. And everybody, we enjoy you being here. Hopefully you came up with a lot of takeaways yourself. Reach out to these people, find them on LinkedIn, follow their companies. And if you're an engineer, I think these guys are hiring. All right. Well, hey, everybody, this has been great. Have a great day. I'm definitely charged up. And I feel like I just want to go find an engineer, even though I don't need one. All right. Well, I'll reach out to you guys and hopefully we can all connect. But hey, thanks so much to the ScaleUp Heroes. And if you want to find more of these, it's scaleupacademy.io. Keep growing, guys and girls. Even though we don't have girls on the panel here, I think it's important we understand that there are just as many engineers and we want to empower them and support them as well. So here's to all the men and all the women who are clicking the keyboards to solve our real problems.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. We're out of here.